Mr. Speaker, I rise in this chamber today not only as an MLA for Carleton, Victoria, but as a woman, a mother, a neighbour, and a voice for the communities that have too often been silenced by fear and grief. I rise to speak on a matter of profound urgency and moral imperative, the escalating crisis of domestic and gender-based violence, GBV, in our province. The motion introduced by our colleagues in the Conservative caucus demands that we face the crisis head-on. This is not just a social issue, it is a public health emergency that calls for immediate, courageous, and coordinated action. Let us begin by grounding ourselves in some facts. We know that we've spoken to the fact that New Brunswick has experienced a staggering 39% increase in GBV from 2009 to 2021. This is the highest rise of any province in the country. And in 2023, our province reported 3,043 cases of gender-based violence. That's a rate of 449 incidents per 100,000 people, well above the national average of 354, and it is the highest in Atlantic Canada. As the representative of Carleton, Victoria, a rural region that encompasses many tight-knit, hard-working communities, I know that behind every statistic is a face, a family, a story. These are our sisters, our mothers and daughters and friends, and in many cases they are our constituents in towns like Florenceville, Bristol, Perth, Andover, Plaster Rock. The trauma does not stop at the doorstep, it spreads throughout entire families, especially the children, who witness abuse and grow up carrying that trauma with them. In New Brunswick, 45% of all police-reported violence against women involves intimate partners. And we also have the highest rate of women killed by intimate partners in Atlantic Canada. Cities like St. John and Moncton now rank second and third in Canada for police-reported violence against women. But make no mistake, this is not just an urban crisis. It is a rural crisis too. According to the 2010 National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey, women are 4 times more likely than men to fear their partners. Among those surveyed, 37% of women reported lifetime gender-based violence compared to 9% of men. Young women in ages 15 to 24 are particularly vulnerable, with nearly 1 in 3 reporting a gender-based violence in the last year. And Indigenous women, whose communities are also present in my riding, face even higher rates, with 61% reporting lifetime gender-based violence compared to 44% for non-Indigenous women. In 2021 alone, 3,172 people in New Brunswick reported experiencing GBV. That's 497 cases per 100,000, again, well above the national average of 345. Even these disturbing numbers likely underestimate the scope of the crisis. Nationally, 80% of gender-based violent cases go unreported. In our province, where small-town culture often values privacy, this underreporting may be even more pronounced. Victims often view abuse as a private matter. They fear they won't be believed. Immigrant women in our growing multicultural communities, especially those settling in areas like Woodstock, Heartland, face language barriers, fear of deportation, and a deep distrust of authorities. So why is gender-based violence so prevalent here? First, there are socioeconomic stressors. In Carleton, Victoria, many families grapple with job insecurity, food affordability, social isolation. And these pressures don't cause violence, but they certainly do create environments where abusive patterns can escalate unchecked. Second, there are systemic gaps. While Moncton has a specialized domestic violence court, this isn't available province-wide. And even when cases do make it to court, we've heard troubling reports of dismissive attitudes from those who should be protecting victims. Some judges still refer to these acts as hustles or relationship disputes, minimizing the devastation and the impact of abuse. Third, there are cultural barriers in our increasingly diverse province. Cultural misunderstandings, inadequate translation services can leave an immigrant woman isolated. A 2018 study confirmed that many struggles to access help, facing stigma both inside and outside their cultural communities. So consider this. Every night, roughly 6,000 women and children in Canada seek refuge in shelters to escape abuse. Around 300 of them are turned away because there simply isn't room for them. In New Brunswick, 92% of shelter residents report psychological abuse, 82% physical abuse, 32% sexual abuse, and 58% financial abuse. This isn't just a women's issue. It's a family issue, a community issue, a public health issue. Children who witness GBV, like the many who live in our school districts in Centerville and Bath and surrounding rural areas, they suffer long-term psychological trauma. And many will carry the scars of that violence into their adult relationships. GBV is linked to depression, PTSD, and chronic illness, and the economic toll from healthcare costs lost to productivity is staggering. Now, to humanize these numbers, let me share two heartbreaking stories. Kiara Agnew, a 26-year-old from New Brunswick, was killed by her boyfriend while vacationing in Mexico in November 2024. She was found in a hotel room. Her boyfriend was arrested. Her death far from home highlights how victims can remain at risk even when physically removed from the danger. It also underlines the need for universal safety planning and access to support. Closer to home again, in April 2025, 26-year-old Sarah Teakles of Musquash, New Brunswick, went missing. Her body was later found in Maces Bay. A 31-year-old man was charged with manslaughter and indignity to a dead body. The RCMP confirmed it was a case of gender-based violence. Both women are now commemorated by the Silent Witness Project in New Brunswick, represented by life-size red silhouettes that haunt our public spaces and remind us of the lives lost to intimate partner violence and partner homicide. Declaring gender-based violence an epidemic is not symbolic, it's strategic. It's a declaration that New Brunswick will no longer tolerate abuse and that survivors matter. The World Health Organization has already declared GBV as a global health crisis. The Liberal government would have us amend this motion to declare gender-based violence a systemic crisis of epidemic proportion, borrowing wording from the World Health Organization. And I'm thrilled that we were able to combine the two to create a motion that is acceptable to both parties. But because we have to remember who the WHO is representing. They're looking at recipes. They're looking at issues on a global level. We're suggesting that the statistics we have before us on a provincial level, where I reiterate we are unfortunately top in the country for increase, demand urgent responses from government to declare it an epidemic, because we must. Other provinces are taking action. Nova Scotia declared GBV an epidemic in September 2024. Ontario is considering similar legislation. And if they can act swiftly, so can we. In Nova Scotia, the bill passed in just 10 minutes with unanimous all-party support, and that is the political will we need in this chamber as well. Advocates like the New Brunswick Federation of Labour, White Ribbon Fredericton, and Survivors Against United Violence are calling on us to lead. They remind us that this declaration opens the door to do better funding, stronger policies, and tools like Clare's Law, which lets individuals find out if a partner has a history of abuse. So what must we do? We must increase funding and accessibility for support services. Shelters in New Brunswick are chronically underfunded, and during COVID, staff were left shelters due to low wages, often between $13.41 and $18 an hour. Bed capacity dropped due to safety regulations, and yet the threat level only rose. We need to enhance training and judicial protocols. We must ensure all police officers, judges, and social workers receive consistent training on IPV, so no case is ever dismissed as a tussle. We have to promote safety planning and public awareness, and victims must know their options, whether they're in St. Leonard or Centerville, Moncton or Musquash. We must address barriers of marginalized communities. We need culturally competent services, multilingual supports, and immigration-safe reporting options. And we must invest in prevention and hold perpetrators accountable. The cycle must be broken. Early intervention, counseling, and accountability measures are essential. So, Madam Speaker, this is not just about legislation. It's about people. It's about our constituents, our neighbours, our families. It's about ending cycles of fear and violence and replacing them with safety, dignity, and hope. We waste time wordsmithing and quibbling over adjectives and adverbs. The time is ripe to draw together and work beyond party lines to acknowledge the commitment that government must make to change the landscape of gender-based violence and its impact on the people of New Brunswick. I plead with the women of this Legislative Assembly. We currently sit with 35% of the voting body. I beg those of us who have young women at home and in our lives. I implore the honourable men sitting with us who have daughters and sisters and mothers and friends. And I embrace those here present who may have at some point in their lives been victims who survived. Consider this. If we are worried about the language epidemic being too clinical or medical, how much more medical could it be than to see a body bag being carried out of a home? Let the memory of Kiara Agnew, Sarah Teakles, and the many unnamed women lost to gender-based violence be our catalyst for change. Let us commit, yes. Let us commit right here and right now to building a New Brunswick where no one lives in fear of their partner, where survivors are heard and supported, and where justice is not delayed or denied. I thank you.